Just Mark here. All right, so today I want to talk about a subject that's a little bit sensitive to me. I am 47 years old. I've never been married. I have no kids. I'm single. I've been single now for just over a year. I went through a separation in 2024, well, late 2023, early 2024. And I want to talk a little bit about, over the next little while, why I am single, or why I've never been married, or why I have no kids. I want to preface this, first of all, by saying I've always wanted to be a dad. I've just never met a partner with which that happened with. Now, there's another reason behind why I don't have kids, but we'll get to that later. Now, when I talk about never being married, now I've been in about 3 or 4 serious relationships that lasted, anywhere from 3 years all the way up to my most recent, which was just over 7 years, and each one had its own pieces that made it so that I never got to that stage until my last relationship, where I did propose in July of 2022. So when I look back on my past, yeah, I've dated, here and there. In my teen years, I was a very awkward kid. Had a couple of girlfriends. I don't know if I count those now when I look back. In my 20s, I did start a relationship I want to say, I would have been about 23. No, not 23. I would have been about 23 when I started dating that girl. And we dated for almost 4 years. And that one didn't last simply because we were both young, immature, too much going on, and then I waited a few years, dated sporadically, never got serious with anybody after that. And, I would say late 20s, I dated another girl for about 4 years. And that relationship itself was that's one of the ones I should not have stayed in as long as I did for various reasons. And both her and I, we got along well in the beginning. Things went really good. We both faced some various medical challenges throughout our relationship as it kind of went forward. And at the end of it, that relationship ended. I'm not going to go into details to why any of these relationships ended. I don't think that's fair to the women involved, nor myself. But I will say that they just didn't work. And each one has its own reasons. Now, when I get to my most recent long-term relationship, over 7 years, I was a stepdad. We had a great relationship, with very few challenges between us during that time, but a lot of external factors that made things a little bit tough. And in the end, again, it just didn't work. And, I did propose. That's the closest I've ever been to marriage, and that was in July of 2022. And that engagement lasted about, I want to say, 15 months. And now I find myself single. So it was October of 2023 when my most recent relationship ended. And now we're heading here now into January of 2025. I've enjoyed the single life for the last little while. And in between my last 2 serious relationships, I was single for 5.5 years. Minus like going on a couple of dates, but I never got back into a relationship. I did date another girl briefly for about 6 months during that time, like the gap between those 2 relationships. But again, for various reasons, that didn't work out. So for me, it could be, the type of women I've dated, the choices I've made. I'm not perfect. Pardon me. I've never been perfect. And I've made some mistakes in each relationship I've been a part of. However, with that being said, I did love each of these women in a different way, and I do believe that I've fallen in love a couple times, and I do believe in true love. And I used to always believe in getting married and having kids, and not necessarily having that like white picket fence or anything, but when it came to actually getting there, I never was. I don't know. Part of me wondered if I was never the marrying kind to begin with. I'm a good guy. I'm a nice guy. No, correction. I'm not a nice guy. I'm a good guy. I've needed to gain some maturity over the years. I've needed to gain perspective. And honestly, for the most part, I've never been super confident when it came to like getting into the dating field. Whether it was women I knew, didn't have the confidence to ask out. I could give you a laundry list of women that I should have asked out at various points that I really, 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 really liked. But I didn't. And, the relationships I've had all had great qualities, but also had enough that it didn't get us to the next step. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, I'm 47, and I think now that I don't want to get married. I don't want kids anymore. Well, I'm honestly too old for kids at this point, and I'm content with being a dog dad. And no, where was I? Oh yeah, okay. And now I'm trying to figure out who I am now as a single man with no family. I did have the opportunity to be a dad. Bonus dad is what they called me for years. For 7 years, I helped raise a couple of kids, made a lot of mistakes, did a lot of things right, but in the end, they're gone. And I think that's part of why I have zero desire to have kids or even date someone who's got kids at this point. Maybe that'll change down the road, but I've really enjoyed my life and being single the last year and a bit. I've found peace, which I love. I'm able to do what I want when I want, not to be accountable with anybody else. And I think those are important things. And a lot of people forget that because when you're in a relationship, you compromise and you do different things and you lose a bit of yourself, which in some cases, there's parts that are good to lose. And you gain quite a lot within that relationship. Maybe you gain some happy memories. Maybe you gain, experiences that you never would have had without being in that relationship. And you know what? You experience love. I've definitely experienced a lot of love in my time. And I want to believe that each of these women love me in their own way. But now that I'm single, I realize that that's not for me. And I'll kind of get into a little bit later on as to why I think being single is more important to me. And I'll also talk a little bit more about the kid situation. I wanted kids. I wanted to be a dad. However, there's a couple of factors to this. Obviously, it never happened with anybody I was with. The other factor is that I want to say about 20 years ago, doctors told me I may not be able to have children because I had a surgery, as they thought I had testicular cancer. I want to say I was 25 at the time. And I did, go to the sperm bank and leave a donation, but eventually I gave that up because I was content in the situation I was in a few years ago where I decided I didn't want, that we weren't, my now ex and I weren't going to have kids. I was content with my two stepkids. Hindsight, 2020, but it is what it is. So that's a little bit about that situation and not having children. So the next thing I want to talk about is, why I am, embracing the single life and what's important to me now and why I doubt I will date again. Who knows? I mean, but right now I'm dead set against dating. I have zero desire. Also, how do you date in your 40s, especially your late 40s? I'm an older guy, and it's not like it was in your 20s, where it was as easy to meet women and go out on dates, and it was a little more casual. But yeah, so we're going to talk about that in here in a little bit. All right, so let's talk about the reasons why I enjoy being single. As I said, I've been single for just over a year now, and honestly, I've I've finally found peace. And I think in every relationship I had in the past, there was a very small element of peace, great moments of happiness, more lows than highs, and a lot of stress. And I find in relationships, I can be too much of a people pleaser. And sometimes I don't push back or fight enough. My last relationship, we never had a single argument until the very end. And then we fought a few times. And that's just a part of it. Maybe we should have fought more in our relationship. Maybe I should have set more boundaries. And that goes with everyone I've been in. When I was younger, I definitely was one of those guys like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to make my woman happy. The problem was I wasn't super happy, and as I got older, I did push back a little more in certain situations, but I've kind of gotten a little bit away from the people pleasing. I'm still a little bit of a people pleaser, and that can be a challenge in any relationship. And I think for the most part, in every relationship I've been in, up until, well, except for my last one. I mean, my last one, I wanted to get married. I proposed. I went that far. Now I'm stuck with a diamond ring that I can't even sell. But now that I'm single again, I enjoy my freedom to go as I please. I'm not stressed anymore. I just take care of myself. The other part of it is if I did date again, or I did get to that point, I have to find someone who brings more peace into my life and more happiness in my life than I've found. Well, okay, happiness I'll use as a loose term because I'm still working on a few things, but I have found so much peace. And I love not being stressed out anymore. I love not worrying about anybody else or being accountable to anybody else. I'm accountable to me. So any screw ups I make are mine. And I don't have to worry about hurting other people in the process. And that's a really, really, really big thing for me. And there comes the dynamic of men and women. We're very different creatures. We want different things. I am a bit more of a laid back guy. I do get upset once in a while. And I find, when I'm in a relationship, I compromise sometimes a little too much. And this is why I don't think I'll ever get into these situations again. It would take a very, very amazing woman for me to take that next step. It sucks in some degree that I'm 47 years old and I will never have children. And I've thought about that a lot because I've always wanted to be a dad. The running joke is, uncle to many, father to none. I've had the experience of being a dad when I had my stepkids, and that was great. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I was growing as a parent in different ways and I made some mistakes. Absolutely. Could I have done a few things better? For sure. But yeah, sometimes it's sad when I sit back and think, there's no one that's going to be there, that I can have that special bond with. That's mine. I look at some of my friends and their kids and the way they are together, and it blows my mind because it's fun to see the interactions. Even with my stepkids, I saw how great they were with both their mom and their dad and how that bond was different. And than it was with me, even as a step parent. I was important, but not nearly as important as mom and dad. So, yeah, at this point, I'd say the reasons why I am single or not married or never been married and I have no kids is because I just have not found someone I was compatible with enough to get to that step. Also, relationships take work. And I mean, I've dated a few people who didn't want to work on the issues, and that happens. There's a couple of relationships I've been in where I didn't want to work on the issues. I was just would sit in my couch or just sit back and relax and not overthink, and I would avoid arguments. And maybe that's a part of the problem too. I don't like conflict. I really don't. I usually shut down. But, I do enjoy my life, but I want peace. And I think for now, peace is more important than the thought of getting married or even dating. You know, there's a small part of me that hopes that my mindset will change and that I will want to date in the future. But I think I'm a long way from that right now. I have too much stuff in my life that I need to work on. I remember when I was younger, you think, oh my gosh, if I propose to this girl, I get to the stage, I've got to, start working towards having a good career, having a good house. I remember my relationship in my 20s, it was all about finding that career. I was going to university. She was going to university. And, decisions I was making were hit and miss in terms of jobs. And I knew there was a long terms, but you put so much pressure on yourself in your 20s to get this right. And I just, I think in my 20s, I just couldn't get it together. And as I got older, I've got a steady job, which I like. And I thought I was ready. And I think I was ready. I'm pretty sure I was ready. But, it's time for me not to put that pressure on myself and work solely on me and have my fun and, keep my peace. And honestly, it's now allowing me to work on projects like this. I'm doing a YouTube channel for the first time in my life after 5 years of thinking about it, literally 5 years. 2020 is when I really first started thinking about doing this. I think maybe late 2019. And I really should have started this during COVID. I would have had some really cool stories back then as I was live. And yeah, I don't know. Anyways, that's a little bit about why I'm single, never been married, have no kids. And honestly, for me now, it's just about living a happy life. All right, so I stepped back and I watched a little bit of the video I just recorded and thought I want to add a couple more things. And the reality of it is I am happy. But I think a big part of my growth now is working on myself. And honestly, I think most men will agree we want peace in our lives. So if any of you are watching this, you've kind of watched to the end, please share your stories with me. I would love to hear, what you feel about relationships. Are you a man or a woman who is, late 40s, early 50s, maybe even your 60s, and you've never had kids? Heck, I would love to hear from some people who are 15, 20 years older than me who can say what their experience was and how much, what their life is like now if they've never had children or ever been married. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to add that at the end. All right. I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.